What if an emperor, crowned with gold and worshipped by millions, decided that his truest love, his most sacred partner, was not a woman, not even a person, but a stone? Would you believe such a thing could ever happen? And if you had lived in Rome 2,000 years ago, would you have stood among the crowds to watch such a marriage unfold? This is the story of Elagabalus, a boy emperor, barely 16, who believed himself more priest than ruler, more servant of heaven than leader of men. He was crowned in Rome, yet his heart belonged to a god from the east. And in the hush of history, people still whisper of the day he wed that god in a marriage that bewildered the empire. But let us go slowly, step by step. Can you picture the narrow streets of Rome in the year 218? The air smells of smoke, of bread baking, of incense rising from temple courtyards. Soldiers march in armor, senators pass in robes, children play in the dust. Yet beneath this ordinary rhythm, whispers run like water underground. The new emperor is strange, they say, too young, too foreign, too devoted to a god no one here truly understands. Who was this god? It was not Jupiter, not Mars, not Venus or Apollo. It was a black stone, smooth, rounded, shining faintly, said to have fallen from the sky in the city of Emesa in Syria. To the people of that land it was no mere rock. It was the body of the sun god, Elagabal. And to Elagabalus, raised from childhood as its priest, it was not just sacred, it was everything. Have you ever seen how a child holds close the beliefs of their home, even when they travel far away? Elagabalus carried his god with him to Rome, not only in memory, not only in ritual, but in truth. The great black stone was brought into the heart of the empire, mounted on a chariot, paraded through the streets. Citizens stared, some crossed themselves, others muttered. Was this truly a god? Or was it only a foreign stone, forced upon them by a boy emperor? And yet Elagabalus was unwavering. What is power, he asked himself, if not the union of heaven and earth? What is devotion if not a bond so deep it becomes marriage? Why should the sun god not be joined in sacred union, as men and women are joined? The thought began quietly, perhaps whispered first in prayer, perhaps shaped by dreams. But soon it grew, swelling like the beating of drums. He would marry his god. He, the high priest and emperor, would stand before the stone, not as servant, not as worshipper, but as spouse. Can you imagine the reaction? The Senate sat in uneasy silence. Priests of Jupiter frowned in disapproval. Soldiers, loyal to the emperor, kept their faces still. And the common people? What did they think, hearing that their emperor prepared a wedding not with a queen, but with a stone? Did they laugh in disbelief? Did they shudder in fear? Or did they simply wait, curious to see what such madness would look like? The preparations began. The palace courtyard was draped with garlands. Gold shimmered in the sunlight, silks fluttered in the breeze. Musicians tuned their instruments, their strange notes carrying through the city. Priests from Syria, robed in bright colors, burned incense and sang hymns foreign to Roman ears. Slowly the black stone was lifted high, placed upon a pedestal adorned with jewels, with flowers, with perfumed smoke. Can you see it now in your mind? The great dark shape gleaming in the firelight, incense curling like mist around it, the hush of expectation settling over the crowd. And there, emerging from the palace, the emperor himself. Elagabalus wore robes of gold embroidered with stars. A crown rested on his head, catching the light as though flames danced upon it. In his hands he carried gifts, wine, bread, fruit, symbols of life. But more than that, he carried certainty. In his eyes burned devotion, not for Rome, not for the Senate, not for any mortal woman, but for the God whose presence filled the stone before him. What would you have felt standing there among the people? Awe at the sight of such conviction, or dread, sensing that Rome's sacred balance was breaking? The music swelled, the priests chanted, Elagabalus raised his arms, and with words spoken in a tongue few understood, he declared the union himself. The living high priest, joined forever to the sun god embodied in the black stone, husband and god, man and heaven, the emperor of Rome and the fragment of the sky. A strange silence followed. Did the people cheer? Some say yes. Did they mutter? Undoubtedly. Did they feel the world shift, just a little, as tradition gave way to something new? Almost certainly. And as the day faded into night, the wedding of emperor and god was sealed. But what comes after such a marriage? Can an empire truly live under such a union? Can a stone be a consort, a bride, a queen? Close your eyes now and imagine the smoke still lingering, the garlands wilting in the night air, the emperor exhausted yet exultant. The black stone rests silently on its pedestal, unmoved, eternal. And the city of Rome, restless, wonders what will come next. The marriage of Elagabalus to the black stone was not the end. In truth, it was only the beginning. Have you ever noticed how once a bold act is taken, the next act must be bolder still? As though the first step down a strange path demands that every step after it be stranger? So it was with Elagabalus. Having wed his god, he now sought to bind that god not only to himself, but to Rome itself. But how could such a union be sealed? What bride could be worthy of the sun? The emperor's gaze turned to the most sacred goddess of Rome, Vesta. Guardian of the eternal flame, protector of the hearth, she was the spirit of the city's life. Her priestesses, the Vestal virgins, tended her fire day and night, ensuring it never went out. To Romans, the flame was the very breath of the empire. If it died, so too would Rome. And now, Elagabalus declared, that flame, that goddess, must be joined in marriage to his stone. Can you hear the gasp of the Senate? Can you see the eyes of the vessels wide with horror? To them, this was no mere eccentricity. It was sacrilege. Vesta was not a consort to be handed to a foreign god. She was Rome itself. Yet Elagabalus insisted. He ordered that Vesta's sacred image be brought to his temple. He arranged for ceremonies where the black stone and the goddess would be united, just as he himself had been united to the sun. In his mind, this was a cosmic harmony, east and west, fire and sun, heaven and earth. But in the minds of his people, it was a dangerous mockery. Would you have dared to speak against him? Would you have whispered your doubts in the streets, knowing the emperor's ears were everywhere? Or would you have stayed silent, as many did, watching, waiting, unsettled? The ceremonies grew ever more elaborate. Elagabalus paraded the stone through Rome in a chariot drawn not by horses, but by white bulls. He himself walked backward in front of it, holding the reins, never turning his back on the god. Music swelled, incense choked the air, crowds gathered in uneasy silence. Some bowed, some laughed, some cursed under their breath. What do you think you would have felt watching such a procession? Would you have believed the emperor wholly? Or would you have seen only a boy in golden robes, entranced by his own delusion? The Senate grew restless. Religion for Rome was not only faith, but order. Each god had its place, each ritual its form, each tradition its balance. To exalt one god above all others, to drag Vesta herself into a foreign marriage, was to tear at the fabric of the empire. And yet, who could stop an emperor? Even among the people, curiosity mingled with fear. Some whispered that perhaps the god of the sun truly was supreme. After all, does not the sun rule all things? Does not its light touch every land, every sea, every life? Others whispered that such pride could only bring ruin. Was not Rome great because it honored many gods, not one? Was Elagabalus daring to break the very pact that held heaven and earth together? In his palace, the emperor lived more as priest than ruler. He wore robes of silk and gold, not armor. He surrounded himself with dancers and singers, not generals. He prayed long hours to his stone, offered endless sacrifices, demanded that all other gods take second place. He was not content to be emperor of men. He wished to be the spouse of heaven. And yet, beneath the splendor, cracks were forming. The Praetorian Guard, the soldiers who protected him, muttered in their barracks. The Senate met in hushed tones, their patience wearing thin. His mother and grandmother, who had raised him to power, tried to guide him, but even they could not temper his devotion. Can you imagine the atmosphere of Rome in those days? The markets still bustled, the baths still filled, the games still entertained. Life continued, but beneath it all ran a current of unease. Each procession of the Black Stone, each ritual of marriage, each whisper of sacrilege, widened the distance between emperor and people. Still, Elagabalus did not falter. To him the marriage was not scandal, it was salvation. By joining his god to Vesta, by binding east to west, he believed he was ensuring Rome's eternity. If the sun and the flame were one, how could the empire ever fall? Do you think he believed this with all his heart, or do you think perhaps that he was only a boy, lost in the grandeur of his own role, intoxicated by power he did not fully understand? As the months passed, the emperor's devotion grew wilder. Banquets were held in honor of the divine union. Senators were forced to attend as guests, seated not by rank, but as witnesses to the marriage. Imagine their discomfort, eating bread and drinking wine while the emperor toasted the Black Stone as though it were his bride. Did they glance at one another in silence? Did they force polite smiles while their stomachs churned? In these rituals, the line between worship and theater blurred. Elagabalus danced before the god, his movements foreign, swaying, rhythmic, unlike anything Roman eyes had known. He sang in languages they did not understand, words that seemed strange and secret. Was it devotion? Was it madness? Or was it something in between? An attempt to fuse worlds that were never meant to meet? The emperor saw himself as chosen, the people saw him as lost, and somewhere between the two lay the truth. The marriage had been declared, the rituals performed, the processions marched. And yet, the empire did not rejoice. Instead, unease thickened, like incense too heavy for the air. Can you sense how silence itself can become dangerous? How whispers, left unspoken, gather weight until they crush even an emperor? The Senate grew weary, the Praetorian Guard muttered in their camps, the people laughed in secret or shuddered or turned away. Rome had endured emperors who were cruel, emperors who were gluttonous, emperors who were strange, but this marriage of God and stone, this forcing of Vesta into a foreign union was too much. It was not only eccentricity, it was an insult to Rome itself. And what is an emperor without Rome? Elagabalus still believed. Morning after morning he prayed to his Black Stone. Evening after evening he danced in the temple, perfumed smoke rising around him. He believed he was chosen, that he was not merely ruler, but spouse of the divine. But outside his palace, his grip on the empire slipped, finger by finger. Have you ever seen someone so certain, even as the world abandons them? A child clutching a toy no one else values, a singer clinging to a song no one else hears. So it was with Elagabalus. His grandmother, Julia Meza, who had raised him to power, saw the danger. His mother, Julia Soemias, defended him as best she could. But the tide was turning. Even their influence could not calm the soldiers' unrest. Even their voices could not silence the Senate's anger. The Praetorian Guard, once his protectors, began to plot. They had sworn to defend Rome, not to indulge the fancies of a boy who wedded a stone. They whispered of his cousin, Alexander Severus, calmer, steadier, more Roman in spirit. Would not the empire be safer under him? And so the end came. Not with thunder, not with fire, but with swift betrayal. In the year 222, the Praetorians struck. Elagabalus, still only 18, was dragged from his chambers. His cries echoed in the halls, but no one came to save him. His mother clung to him, but both were slain. His body was dragged through the streets of Rome, stripped, mocked, mutilated. At last it was thrown into the Tiber, carried away by the waters as though to wash Rome clean of his reign. And what of the stone, that sacred Black Stone, the bridegroom of gods, the partner of Vesta? the husband of Elagabalus. Quietly it was sent back to Syria, to Emesa, where it had first been worshipped. No longer paraded, no longer crowned with garlands, it returned to its old temple. Rome pretended the marriage had never happened. Temples built for Elagabal were rededicated to Jupiter. The ceremonies were forgotten, or tried to be, but memory is not so easily erased. Do you think the people truly forgot, or do you think, in hushed conversations in dim taverns, they still whispered, "Do you remember the boy who married a stone?" History remembered. Elagabalus's name became legend. To some, he was a monster. To others, a madman. To a few, perhaps, a prophet misunderstood. But to all, he was strange. His reign was short, his deeds eccentric, his end violent. Yet the image of him in golden robes, standing before a black stone, declaring his union with the sun, that image endured. And now, as you drift into thought, ask yourself, what did it mean? Was it madness, pure and simple? Or was it devotion, so absolute that it defied human reason? Was he a boy lost in delusion, or a dreamer trying to bind heaven and earth in one embrace? We cannot know. What we do know is that history is not only shaped by battles and laws, but by strangeness, by moments so bizarre, so unexpected, that they cannot be forgotten. Elagabala's marriage was one such moment. Close your eyes and picture it once more. The courtyard heavy with incense. The golden-robed emperor, youthful, trembling yet certain. The black stone shining in the firelight. The vows spoken, not between man and woman, but between man and God. Between empire and sun. The people stand in silence. Some laugh, some fear, some wonder, and through centuries, the story drifts like smoke, reaching even to you tonight. Perhaps it was folly, perhaps it was faith, perhaps, in the end, it was both. And as you let the story fade, as you feel your breath grow slower, calmer, softer, know this: history is filled with mysteries, and not all are meant to be solved. Some are meant only to be remembered, whispered like prayers, lingering like dreams. Elagabalus is gone. The stone is gone. The empire itself is dust. But the silence of that marriage remains, echoing softly, endlessly, through time.